A thread by Carlos Oswida. Let me ask a simple question. Why has nobody ever used cogent arguments to refute my detailed reasoning for why Donald Trump will be reelected? This always happened. In every single field in which I dabbled, all I get in response is, you're wrong. I'm going to compare myself to Trump, but I know exactly what he's been through. All his life, he's faced an avalanche of, you're wrong. Arms folded, chin up, intellectual pudnockery. Now, I learned long ago to never be closed-minded. Always being ready to accept unconventional ideas has expanded my brain power. My communist brother joined his social therapy cult in 1987. They gave him a script, and he's been reading from it for 32 years. For 32 years, he was outrageously insulting, but they trained him to speak in a gentle, reasonable, parental tone of voice. He thought he was so slick. Well, I'm very devious. For example, my sister told us that all three of her children had OCD. They all had tons of trigger words that would cause them to ritualize if we said them. I saw this happen only once when my nephew began chanting flag, 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 flag when my mother triggered him. My sister sent several pages of instructions to the school. One boy could never be called on first, but he could also be never called on later than fifth. Both boys couldn't be spoken to directly by the PE coach. He had to text his instructions to my sister, who would then text them to the boys, as the boys and the coach stood a few feet apart. So I devised a plan. I gave all three kids super soakers outside my parents' house without telling my sister. So after I gave them the super soakers, I said something like, now, you can shoot 13 vampires on Halloween as they try to yank skeletons from Daddy Longlegs from coffins at midnight. All were trigger words. No reaction. They totally ignored me as they ran off to play. It was all bogus. So, when my communist brother finally dropped his mask and screamed at me like Hitler about how Trump was preventing him from getting checked for the COVID-19 he didn't have, I just debunked him by having him check the CDC website on me. I debunked all 10 or 12 of his talking points. In between each debunking, he just sat there in silence. He hasn't actually used his brain in 32 years. It's atrophied down to the size of a Granny Smith apple. There's only one way to get smarter: reverse engineer. Learning facts doesn't make you smarter. Trying to figure out anything makes you smarter. The more you figure out, the easier it gets. I recently had an MRI, and they were shocked to see that I don't have the brain of a 58-year-old man. It's because I use my brain all the time. Last night, my internet service went out, so I watched a movie on my computer. I watched the Al Pacino movie, Scarface, but I watched only the stuff in the background to see what I could find. It's really fun. You could see production assistants talking to bystanders, things like that. I look for details that appear only for a flash. I've been on lots of movie and music video sets, but only outdoors. Studio filming doesn't interest me. One of the most interesting people I ever met was a professional member of a crowd. He also played corpses. He was a fit, blonde man of about 35. He had clothing from every single historical era, as well as mustaches and beards. That was how he made his living. Crowd members who ignore cameras are vital. One person can destroy a whole scene. This guy had no desire to be famous. He was a working stiff. Everywhere I go, if I see something I don't know about, such as ambulance types that are unfamiliar, I ask the people using them if they wouldn't mind answering a few questions. I always make sure they're not busy or on a lunch break. Nobody's ever told me to go away. A lot of people like to tell me about their equipment, and I love learning new things. A corollary is that I avoid passive entertainment. For example, I don't know anything about influencers. I had no idea that Jenna Marbles became a huge star. This was the only video I watched. language warming. And this is Jenna Marble's video, How to Trick People into Thinking You're Good Looking. It's not worth watching. She became a multimillionaire. And then it was pointed out that in one video, she pretended to be Nicki Minaj. In another video, she pretended to be an Asian or Mexican person, I don't know which. This is an 11-year body of innocuous work. So she deleted almost all of her videos, groveled for an eternity, and fled YouTube. I didn't watch more than the first minute of it. It's too stupid for words. That's what I mean about not letting your brain rot. There's far too much to learn for me to waste time on intellectual dreck. This is a really stupid phase we're in. That's why I refuse to take part in it on any level. Trump is doing the same. While Jenna Marbles douses herself in gasoline and lights it with a match, Trump is rebuilding destroyed communities. That's one of the many reasons he'll be reelected. Watch the comments on this thread. People with brains the size of Granny Smith apples will leave one-liners or ask puny gotcha questions that they think are really slick. But I won't be given a cogent argument for why Trump will lose. Back when I was a member of military discussion forums, pretty much everything I said was challenged by know-it-alls, experts. This is pretty arcane, but it's a good example of reverse engineering. Here's an undated photo that I have of Bulgarians. Since the Germans and Austrians trained Bulgarians in assault tactics, and since German and Austrian assault troops wore the death's head skull as their symbol, I figured these were likely Bulgarian assault troops. Oh, the scorn. It was as if I'd insulted somebody's mother. Someone said they were officer candidates from the 1930s, but the person offered no evidence, and their uniforms date from World War I. All are corporals and sergeants. The Germans trained non-commissioned officers, NCOs, to train their own men. Years later, I found this newsreel footage from 1925, link in the description, to be publicly executed, 1925 YouTube. The soldiers are from the 1st Sofia Infantry Regiment Assault Platoon. They all wear wartime uniforms. And they all have skulls painted on the front of their helmets. So I did a lot of searching on multiple auction sites in multiple languages, and I found another photo from July 24th, 1918. Notice what's on their helmets. 1st Sofia Infantry Regiment Assault Company. Black skulls, except for one. And finally, the 2nd Iskir Infantry Regiment Rusa Assault Company. March 11th, 1918. Wartime. In all the years I was in the military history community, I met exactly 4 nice people: a Frenchman, an Italian, a German, and a Pole. All the others were buttholes with brains the size of Granny Smith apples. Reverse engineering keeps my brain huge. This is another of the many reasons I love the Trump era. I can't predict him, but I can come close to reverse engineering him. And that makes my arguments cogent. I offer information to back up my claims. I never just say you're wrong. What are the odds of anyone giving me a cogent argument in the comments? I cracked myself up.